Financial experts have described the NPP government's imposition of more taxes, including the 15% VAT on electricity consumption on the ordinary Ghanaian, as a lazy approach to raising revenue. Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta last Friday justified the imposition of those taxes to raise revenue for government business. The latest is the 15% VAT on electricity consumption, which many Ghanaians have opposed. We will hear from an economist and professor of finance at the University of Ghana, Godfred Bockwin, on this. But first, let's listen to the Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, who says Ghanaians will be just fine.
Expenditure, and then the central bank continues to build its reserves. I think we are going to be fine. It's going to be a flourishing and prosperous year. Thank you.
Honorable Minister, the bit about the taxes bit.
Okay, let's go. The governor was clear to you that it's not going to be inflationary. But more important, I mean, we have all sorts of tax reliefs that you don't want to talk about. And with regards to the taxes on electricity, that was some time ago, and it doesn't affect, sort of the lifeline tax people. And so I think we should be all right. The emissions tax, as you know, is really 100 cedis a year. That's what we are praying about. You want all of that analysis right now? No. I think we'll be okay. Yeah?
Okay, it's okay.
We can now listen to economist and professor of finance at the University of Ghana Business School, Godfred Bockwin, who describes the imposition of those taxes on Ghanaians as a lazy approach to raising revenues.
A country that has gone through a painful fiscal adjustment of higher taxes, expenditure rationalization, domestic debt exchange, the only viable way it could welcome its citizens into 2024 was to impose VAT on electricity consumption. Okay? And it's also an election year.
The TUC is kicking against that.
I support them. In fact, I'll be glad to join them if they want to demonstrate against this. I support them. I think Ghana, we have allowed too many wrongs in this country.
But Prof, the wrongs have happened and we need a solution. And part of the solution is simply to mobilize money. So if we can use electricity to mobilize money, these are easy sources by which government can get money.
It's a lazy approach. Government should work hard. Nobody is against raising more money. Look, who are we building this economy for? Are we not building it for Ghanaians? Are we not building it for Ghanaian private sector and businesses? What happens if by the time we achieve macroeconomic stability, half of Ghanaians have gone into poverty and have no way of reversing that? What economy is that?
Let's have a conversation on this. I have been joined by Francis Boy Esquire, who is a tax consultant. Grateful for your time, sir. First, what's your assessment of our tax regime, progressive or regressive?
Thanks for having me. First of all, I can say that over the period, let's say 12, 13 years, we've had too many of the indirect taxes. And indirect taxes, in principle, are normally described as regressive. The reason that we are having too many of them is that they are the easiest to collect, and many people cannot avoid it. So over 60% of our total tax revenue comes from indirect tax. The impact is that the very poor get hit the more. And so I don't see so much of the direct taxes coming in. So in totality, you can describe our tax system as, too much weighted towards the indirect tax. That makes it some form of regressive in our tax system.
And what's the impact of this on our system?
Of course, the poor will suffer the most because, you can't avoid indirect tax. Unless you don't buy any products or anything, you will have to pay. If it is direct tax, it is mostly progressive. The more you earn, the more you pay. And this is synonymous to what we see even in our families. Those who are rich are supposed to pay more. But here is the case, because we are unable to collect the direct taxes, we tend to go for most of the indirect taxes, VAT, levies, here and there. And even the way it has been calibrated, we end up adding the levies on the price of the item before we even slap the VAT. So in effect, it is more like tax on tax. And that is why we normally say the VAT rate is 15%, but effectively it is more than that. It's somewhere 22%. Those are the problems that we see with our tax system.
Well, over the period, we've all been worried over how government is not widening the tax net, but rather deepening the woes of the few who are law-abiding. I mean, isn't this the crux of all our problems?
Exactly put. That is the problem. We were told that the replacement of the 10 with the Ghana card was going to help us widen the base. So we were excited. In tax administration, the first thing that you do is that you identify the taxpayer, then you assess the person to tax. So when we identified over 15 million taxpayers, we thought that database was going to help us expand the base and also now go after the people who are not being taxed, not on the side of the indirect tax. For indirect tax, everybody pays. If you buy anything, you pay. So we thought that we were going to go after the direct taxes, like people who earn other income, the informal sector, business operators, the people who sell their properties and make a lot of money in the form of capital gains. All of these things are issues that we have completely ignored. Look at property tax. We have spoken several years, yet we start it and then we back off. So the approach and the way we are handling it is what is causing the imbalance. So the few people, over 2.4 million workers, or maybe former workers, we can say, they pay the direct tax. And if you have over 30 million people and only 2.4 million people are carrying the burden, then clearly people will complain. So I think that we just have to go back to the drawing board and realign our tax system and say, look, enough of the indirect taxes, no more levies. Let's now focus on the direct taxes. The other non-tax revenue should even be on the table. But over the years, we I don't know whether it's for some political reasons or we don't have the capacity. We don't go into those areas and we just focus on indirect tax. It's quite worrying.
So now Ghanaians are complaining because they say the taxes are too much. Salaries are not being increased, yet the ordinary Ghanaian worker has to adjust every now and then to accommodate these new taxes. Now, more worrying is that Ghanaians don't seem to have a clue of what these taxes are used for, as we still battle with our poor road networks, sick hospitals, bad drainage. The list is long. What's your recommendation as far as fixing this problem is concerned?
So first of all, I think that the government should listen to the complaints. We have something we call tax saturation. We get to a point where people, especially the public who pay, start complaining and say that these taxes are too much for us. And so if you're not careful, they will now find ways. If they can, they'll find ways to avoid it, especially if they believe that they are not seeing what the taxes are being used for. Look at our budgets. All the tax revenue goes into payment of interest on the loans that we have taken, and then also into salaries. So you ask yourself, how many people are being paid in the public sector? That all the money that we are collecting is going for the payment of those. So people will start complaining. If you realize the business community around Abosokain and its environs, they started having problems with the GRA, where GRA mounted people in their shops trying to monitor the VAT implementation. You go there and they tell you that if you want invoice or if you want VAT invoice, this is the price of the item. If you don't want it, this is the price of the item. And so GRA was not able to collect the taxes because people think that the taxes are too much. So if you are unable to balance and ensure that people get to know what they are paying for in terms of physical infrastructure, they will find ways to avoid it. And if we have a budget statement such that only around 10-15% of the total revenue is dedicated to infrastructure development, then there's a problem. To get to a point where people will say, we are not going to pay because we don't know what the use is. Other countries, they pay more taxes, but they know that when they fall sick, for example, they are going for dialysis, they don't pay for it. So people will get to a point where they will say, look, I don't know what I'm paying for, so why force me? And therefore, if I have option, I will escape. And that's what we are about to see. Because if you look at the way VAT is being done now, if the GRA does not put in serious measures, they will not be able to collect the indirect taxes.
I'm grateful for your time. Francis Boy is a tax consultant and is explaining why our tax regime must be well managed so that people will be willing to pay their taxes. Let's take a